Manufacturing Matters is an MFG radio network production brought to you by GIE Media's Manufacturing Group as industry experts take deep dives into the latest manufacturing matters, whether it's new innovations, products, technologies, and emerging markets that help you understand better why manufacturing matters to you and also to the top companies in the medical, aerospace, defense, and electric vehicle manufacturing industries. Hello and welcome to the latest roundtable discussion from GIE Media's Manufacturing Group as we talk about shop floor connectivity. I'm Jake Kaufman, Senior Editor, and we'd like to thank today's sponsors, Renishaw and SMW Autoblok. Renishaw is a world leader in supplying measuring systems and production systems. Its products produce high accuracy and precision, gathering data to provide customers and end users with traceability and confidence in what they're making. This technology also helps customers to innovate their products and processes. Today, factories are collecting and processing more data than ever before, but only those with the access to the right data at the right time can take real advantage of the smart factory. Welcome to Renishaw Central. Renishaw Central is a manufacturing data platform that collects and presents process and metrology data from the shop floor. It connects to measurement devices across manufacturing process or across the manufacturing process and provides invaluable insights. Manufacturers can use these insights to analyze, identify, predict, and correct process errors before they occur. The result is a highly efficient and productive factory, and optimized processes help reduce downtime and minimize waste while also helping reduce the cost. For more information, you can check out the link that has been shared in the chat. Smart manufacturing data platform for industrial process control. Once again, it is Renishaw Central. And SMW Autoblok is a work holding company focused on achieving customer goals and expectations with the highest quality products and services. SMW Autoblok combines stocked and standard products with a highly trained sales, service, and engineering team to consistently provide the ideal work holding solutions to customers across a wide variety of industries. Joining us today from Renishaw is Brandon Golab, a machine tool product manager. Golab has helped improve machine tool cutting processes as an application engineer, specializing in calibration and evaluation of machines, as well as spindle probing and tool setting for more than 20 years. Brandon's career has primarily focused on developing and integrating advanced software for in-process alignment, adaptive machining, and part inspection. Brandon now works with a team of engineers capable of helping customers solve manufacturing problems by integrating both touch trigger and scanning technologies to collect data, correct manufacturing parameters, and also keep cutting processes in control. And once again, from SMW Autoblok USA, we have Larry Robbins, the president and CEO. Robbins joined SMW Autoblok in 2007 as a national sales manager and was appointed to president of SMW Autoblok's commercial division in 2019 and then promoted to CEO in 2024. As CEO, Larry manages all strategic sales and marketing initiatives, as well as overseeing SMW Autoblok's North American sales team and customer base, including machine tool dealers, OEMs, and channels currently under development. He also oversees international products and global product launches, including their new wireless connectivity company, SMW Electronics. Gentlemen, let's get right to the discussion. Thank you so much for your time and participation today.
Thank you, Jake.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate the opportunity as always.
No problem. So we'll go to Brandon. Obviously, we're talking about the Renishaw Central platform in the introduction. So why don't you just kind of open things up with how was Renishaw Central developed?
Renishaw Central primarily was born by customer request to capture probing and tool setting data out of their machines. We initially rolled it out in our own manufacturing process. So over a couple of year period, we tested it, gathered the data, looked at the insights that it gave us, actually rolled out a couple of white paper on it, as well as a case study, and came to the market about a year ago now with a product that's ready for sale, delivery.
Perfect. Thank you, Brandon. So then we'll go to Larry with the next question. Obviously, we talked about the SMW electronics division. Can you talk about how that was launched, and also how does that then kind of go into the topic that we have today with shop floor connectivity?
Jake, you've heard me say this before. If you'd have told me 10 years or 15 years ago that we'd be doing anything that was electronic that didn't involve a computer, to check email, I have to laugh at you. But we saw the industry morphing and getting more and more advanced, and the need for information and data gathering. In the past, what people basically did, I mean, it was as simple as writing stuff down on the pad, keeping the pad next to your machine. You go back a job later and go, oh, what did we do last time? Well, as we all know, that's really effective until you lose your notebook or somebody leaves a job, and now all of a sudden you've lost all your process. So what we decided to do is we started this venture about 15 years ago. It started originally looking at how to electrify a piece of work holding equipment. And when we started doing that, we realized there had to be feedback available. So a customer not only could know what they were doing, but how they did it this time so they can repeat that exact setup next time. So when we started looking at it and started development, it morphed into a product now that not only can monitor work holding, can monitor process, machines, production lines, assembly lines. We're the only company in the world that can provide non-contact transference of data and energy simultaneously over an air gap to either power work holding, monitor machine operation, monitor temperatures, torques, jaw positions, grip force, you name it. If it can be done, we can do it. A lot of this starts out with research. So I think basically what we're doing is we're adding another notch in that shop floor connectivity arena by now allowing not only machine tools to feedback, but the implements that you're holding the workpiece on that machine tool to feedback. And you're even starting to see like smart tooling now with sensors built in. So I think as time goes on, I've said in the past, I wish I was 20 years younger so I could see what's going to happen. And in some ways, I'm really glad I'm not 20 years younger, so I have to work another 20 years. But it's very interesting to see how the industry has morphed in my lifetime. When I first started, the first machine I ever operated was a Pratt & Whitney NC mill. And it was dip switches, and we went to 2 decimal places. We thought, oh my God, who would ever need to be more accurate than that? Now people just laugh, So it really has, in my career, I've seen a huge transformation, and it's kind of nice to see because it's giving us predictability, quality, reliability, and Jake, my favorite word, flexibility.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Larry. We'll go back to Brandon with our next question. So talking about Renishaw Central and shop floor connectivity, what manufacturing equipment across the shop floor are you actually able to connect with that Renishaw Central platform?
Yeah, Jake, we can connect to a variety of OEM machine tools, Mazak, Siemens, Fanuc, all kind of your main control brands would be able to be connected to, most cases bidirectionally. The reason for that bidirectional communication is because we also have a piece of it, IPC, which I think we'll get to later, stands for industrial process or intelligent process control. And it's so that we can send corrections back to the manufacturing process from any measurement device that we connect to. So currently we connect to our Equator X, we connect to various CMMs within the market, but because we have an open API structure, really any gauging system could create a connector that then uploads data into our platform. And from there, we can leverage that to both visualize the data, interrogate the data with third-party systems, or use it to control my process by sending updates back to the machines.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. So we'll go back to Larry. So obviously we have the SMW Autoblok standard products, and we also have these new SMW electronic products. How do those work together to connect a shop floor?
Basically, it allows a customer to provide us with what information. So we can create a whole reporting scenario for a customer. If they have specialized needs, if they want to know, we can go from where the end position of a jaw is to grip force while they're holding the part, to actual jaw position. You can put as much or as little information as you want, all the way down to identifying the fixture that's coming into the manufacturing cell and feeding back to the machine tool. So it's constantly checking to make sure you have the right part for the right job with the right tooling. And what we allow people to do is through advanced processes and machine tools and inspection and in sensor technology and in touch probe technology, we can interface with all those systems in order to make it complete for the manufacturing capability parts of it, so people know and have predictable quality and predictable setups. The biggest frustration people have is you run a part now, and 6 months from now you run the same part, and it's never more frustrating to watch people in the shop go out and go, "What did we do last time?" And you'll ask, "Well, Jerry did that, but Jerry retired." Well, okay, did anybody write this down? No. Well, rather than recreate the process over and over again, we can make it predictable, and we can write a report based on customer needs. We don't store that report. We don't own that report. We don't store the data. All we do is provide the platform to do it with, and we interface to any machine tool, any system in any shop.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. So we'll go back to Brandon, as you foreshadowed earlier in your answer, talking about the intelligent process control, the IPC. What is it and how does it work within the system?
Yes, so Renishaw's Central's IPC module allows us to take any of the metrology data that we've collected. We have an interface that allows the engineer to determine what tool, what machine that particular measurement controls. We've got a number of settings that allow us to average data, delay data, but in the end, the goal is to keep the process under better control by linking your metrology systems directly to the machine tool, and allowing those measurements to make the corrective action, taking the human error out of it, taking the delays of, for example, getting the report. Somebody then has to take that report, interpret the report, determine, oh, I gotta change tool number 5 by 5 thou, but inevitably 1 out of, I don't know, 5 times or 1 out of 10 times it goes the wrong direction, and the next report comes out. So this just automates it, makes it very streamlined, but also collects that data. So over time, you can go back and analyze it. You can see how effective it is, and you can really keep an eye on how smoothly that process is running, make changes to parameters, for example. And we use a long history of understanding how to use probing to control process. Now we can use gauging, CMMs, and the like to do the same thing without that operator involvement.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. So we'll go to Larry with the next round of questions. So obviously you guys are able to collect a lot of data using the sensors and other things that you guys have on your products. What sort of data are you guys able to generate? And then how is that data then used on the shop floor to improve operations?
Jake, it's unlimited. We can through interaction with the customer. Most of these projects start out with research and development.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get the customer budget to say, this is the parameters as we understand it. This is what the outcome is you want to have. And do you have any steps that have to be in a certain order? What's your process? We'll collect as much data as we can, and then we'll come back to them with a platform and say, is this what you're looking for? It's really customizable to customer needs, because not every customer has the same needs. If you look at, especially manufacturing, and I'll use work holding because that's my background. As an example, you can go to 5 different shops and see the same exact port, and each shop processes it in a totally different way. Whatever works best for them. No one process is right or wrong, unless you're the guy writing the process. No one process is ever right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It is just what works best in your operation. And what this basically allows you to do, Jake, is to create the information you need to give predictable outcomes. Predictability is financially responsible. It's quality responsible. If you have the ability to repeat something that worked perfectly last time, as long as nothing major has changed or nobody's crashed a machine or nobody's lying to their sensors. I mean, because like any other piece of electronics, you can tell it what you want it, and it doesn't question. But with that being said, if you're going to make an investment in having predictable quality, predictable outcomes, should also be realistic about what your expectations of outcome are going to be. I always say with these things, if you don't have a buy-in from the guy on the shop floor to the guy on the top floor, you're wasting your time. You know, so many of these projects start in management. Well, this is a better way to process parts. Let's just make it happen. Then you go to the guy on the floor, and invariably it fails miserably because they had no input. They have no idea. I mean, uh, you know, from something as simple as, you know, I can remember back in the day when Samick went from red packaging to yellow packaging for inserts, or maybe it's the other way around. I ran a shop out of college, and I had a guy say, I don't know what they did to these, but they're not the same inserts. I was like, dude, they're just a different color. No, they're not. Well, I called my guy at Samick. I was like, how many of these containers do you have left? And he goes, thousands. I go, I'll buy 5,000 of them. And he was like, what are you going to do with them? I go, I'm passing out party favors. Do you care? And he laughed. So I would have a guy in our tool room that would change them into the, oh, thank you so much for getting me those old inserts. Well, after about 3 months, I walked out. I go, excuse my French. Hey, dipshit. It's the same inserts. Look, I just had, and it was like, so it's all people's impression of what something is supposed to be like. As simple as something changing the color creates havoc. Can you imagine changing process or saying to somebody, we're going to go from this platform to this platform? If the guy on the shop floor doesn't understand why and the value to it, you're going to fail miserably. So my biggest word of advice in this is it's not all about the information. It's about who provides the information and who's bought into this. If you don't have a buy-in from all around the company, don't waste your money. Let your guys who you depend on every day to provide quality products for you also be a part of the decision process, because in the end, they're going to have to make it work, not me or you. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. So we'll go back to Brandon as we return to Renishaw Central. How does the platform increase manufacturing productivity?
I would say kind of two distinct ways. Our web-based platform, the views that we provide include things like, you know, uptime of the measurement equipment, sources of error. It records anytime, for example, our CMM stops. Why did it stop? Was it waiting for operator input? Was it, you know, an error that came out of the controller? So that data allows you to focus in your engineering resources and determine, you know, what's highest priority. That data is very helpful in kind of resource management. The other side is the IPC. You know, we've talked about it a couple of times now, but that ability to have the data drive the process, make the offsets, and take the close the loop, make it shorter, and take the people out of it, so you get less mistakes, I think is really where we're getting that manufacturing productivity gains. You know, we've often talked about, you know, machine down, but also measurement. I might have, say, a half a dozen machines, equators, CMMs, or the like, measuring the same parts. What if I see one machine consistently fails parts more than the rest? Now I can start driving myself to say, you know, is it that CMM or gauge services a particular machine? So maybe I have a problem with the machine, or is it random? So maybe I have a problem with that measurement device that I'm getting more failures than I typically would. So, you know, just to recap that, it's really about resource management, and then also the automation that comes from the IPC.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. So we'll go back to Larry at SMW. As I ask, aside from the sensors that you guys put into your products, what are some other products offered by SMW that would fall under this connected umbrella?
We make it as simple as we can. We have 3 different versions of this. We call a hybrid, which is a monitored standard piece of work holding equipment. And you're just monitoring process by inputting sensors or inputting certain locators and things into their process to automate it and to give automated feedback. If you really look at this, Jake, and you look at it from an honest set of eyes, there's nothing that's not achievable. It's limited to people's imaginations, because right now this is all fairly new. And when I say new, anything in this industry is more than 30 years, less than 30 years old is fairly new. Um, I equate this, Jake, I equate the outcome that you get from utilizing this correctly. And I'm going to say that 10 times correctly. Make sure that you're providing all the information that you have to, because there's nothing worse than having a customer, spec something out and come to you at the 11th hour and go, oh, but what about this? Well, you never said that. It's not part of it. Well, how do I make it part of it? Well, we start over. So I think that the ability to not only monitor things, but to give you the ability to look at your process as it's happening. So I can go from a piece of work holding equipment to a vise to a dedicated fixture. So we made it in 3 different versions. Like I said, a hybrid version, which monitors standard product, what we call our digit product, which has a standard, like either pneumatic or hydraulic product, but with sensors built into the product, or what we call our emotion products, which is a totally electric setup, which allows you now. So if I have a 3-jaw chuck or a 4-jaw chuck, I have now 4 independent NC axes. So if I'm making parts that, let's say I'm making lots where I'm buying 100,000 forgings or castings, and I may be making 200 or 200 of these a week. Well, from first forging or casting to last forging or casting, depending on how you made those, either the die wares or the mold wares. So over time, through probing and things like that, you can find out, oh, this part at 273 degrees is off by 7 thousandths. As long as you're within the physical limitation of the work holding implement, I now send a signal back to the work holding. I need to adjust this at 273 degrees, 7 thousandths. You'll literally watch an uninhibited movement of a work holding piece to take what would have been a bad port and make it a good port. And envision this. Now I can take ports that have offset features, or features where in the past you might have to go to a second operation. I can offset that port again within the physical limitations of the chuck and do an offset or board, offset or anything you want to do. And the other thing you're giving the customer the ability to do now is give himself the advantage of having the most up-to-date information and quality equipment, so he can be more competitive in his manufacturing process. As we know, people bid for work in our industry, and if you have a better mousetrap, and I use that term very carefully because there's really no such thing, but if you have a better mousetrap, sell the feature, not what you think the features are. Sell on what a customer needs, because somewhere in this mix, we have the ability to implement something to every situation for every customer's need. They just have to be realistic about expenditure too, because this is not inexpensive technology. Like any other new technology, it's fairly expensive compared to a standard product, but in the right environment, it's justified from day one. So
awesome. Thank you, Larry. So we'll bring Brandon back into the conversation, as this is a question directed at both Brandon and Larry. But Brandon, you can go first on this one. How important, obviously, we're speaking with metrology, work holding, whether it be an automation integrator, a machine tool builder, how important is it to work with other manufacturers to ensure that your products can communicate and connect with each other on the shop floor?
Yeah, I'd say that it's very important to us. We've had a number of products through the years that connect to the machine. We have spindle probes, for example, that we're going on about 40 years of producing, 48 years, I think, technically, of producing spindle probes that go in and measure inside the machine tool. So first of all, even back then, it was very important for us to work with the OEM, the control builder, on how that was going to interface with the machine. Over time, we were asked to both improve the programming, but also get that data out in a way that people can use it. So we had products such as Set and Inspect and Reporter that actually communicate directly with the machine, but give a better graphical interface. All that requires the OEMs, the control builders, to help us by either giving APIs or providing documentation on how we can interact with those machines. I would say we couldn't be where we are today without that collaboration amongst the CNC controllers and the machine tool builders.
Thank you, Brandon. So we'll go to Larry with the same question. How important is that collaboration amongst manufacturers to ensure that your products are able to connect and communicate on the shop floor?
I couldn't have said it any better than Brandon did. unless you buy it at the OEM level, you have to make their expectations realistic too. We have a big project going on right now, one of the big three OEMs. And the first question we got was, well, what's my guarantee? And I was like, what? And they're like, well, this will work right out of the box. I was like, I'll tell you what, build something that you built once and tell me right out of the box if it's going to do exactly. As long as you correct the right data and provide the right information for a predictable outcome, it's generally invisible in the background. But if you don't have the buy-in at the OEM level where you interface with them to work for the process to come out so you can do it for multiple customers, it doesn't just have to be one platform, it could be multiple platforms. Once you get the understanding from the OEM, you can almost watch the light go off. And it's so much fun to watch because once you open their minds to what they can do, some of the things we get presented with, they're like, wow, I didn't think of that. I've been doing this for 45 years and I would have never thought of that. So it's interesting again to watch because innovations in our industry come so quickly. I remember when I first started doing this, I had somebody tell me a story about when they first started going on IMTS, it was every 5 years because there wasn't enough technology to have it every year or every 2 years. And he said they could never get that smell of cow manure out of their nose at the stockyards in Chicago where they used to hold this. And when it went to every 2 years, it was because of NC and then CNC. And now you go from one IMTS to the next, and it's almost like it's not fast enough because there's so many innovations. And just like any other industry, there's times that machine controls outweigh our capabilities, and there's times that we surpass the machine controls capabilities. And we're kind of in the midst of that right now, where we're presenting a technology that's disruptive. And at the same time, it's creating a need for the OEMs to adapt to it because we're starting to get buy-ins at the customer level. And the minute the customer goes to them and says, hey, I have this product I want to use, how are you going to integrate this? They just look at them like, we'll have to reach out to them. Thankfully, like Renishaw, we have very good OEM relationships. The OEMs are the core of our business, always have been, always will be. It's probably responsible for up to 60% of our sales ultimately. So we value those partnerships, we value those relationships. And the data interchange and the interface that you get between each company is just, it opens doors and it opens minds. And that's what I love, is watching people just realize what this can do for them. And from a selfish standpoint, of course, but from a not selfish standpoint of watching someone start with an idea and it progress to a product that we were watching operate on the shop floor, there's no better satisfaction. Well, there probably is, but that's totally different. But it's no, there's no better satisfaction than watching a predictable outcome be presented to a customer and they go, and it works, and they're like, and it works every time, and I'm getting the info, and they're just like, you feel like sometimes, and again, I say this a lot, I'm never the smartest guy in the room, I generally know who is, but at that point, you're like, wow, I guess we did do something earth shattering, and it's kind of nice to watch, again, an industry that's given me a career just adapt to new situations, and I think it's what's going to make us competitive in the world market moving forward, is having the ability to be flexible and change on the fly. And I think as this technology progresses, whether it be machine tool based, probe based, inspection based, or manufacturing based, I think at some point there's going to be a necessity for us all to sit down in one room and go over and say, okay, this is what we're doing. How can we help you? And them come to us and say, hey, this is what we're doing. How can we help you? And I think once you have that kind of collaboration in our industry, it's always success. I mean, I liken this technology, the difference between going from a Bridgeport to a 5-axis machine tool, which is earth shattering. And I think this technology is just as industry changing and earth shattering.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. So we'll go back to Brandon with our next question. Obviously, there is a large focus in the industry on finding a workforce. So how does having a connected shop floor kind of help improve the efficiency of the current workers who are out there?
Yeah, good question. I think really it's about it is that efficiency, but it's about the data to drive efficiency. Where do you target? Which projects do you put engineers on? What's the most important machines right now to address with my maintenance team? All this data is what helps us drive that. Before, we would essentially listen to a handful of guys that know the shop, whether it's the head of the maintenance department or a couple of key machinists that understand what's happening, and they would kind of drive, what are we working on next? I think now we have an opportunity to actually let the data tell us, what do we work on next? Which projects do we put engineers on? Where are we losing the most time? Which machine is producing, the least amount of conforming parts? Things like that really help us maximize the employees that we do have. And then obviously data empowers all the way down the line. So as long as you're willing to allowing people to see what their machine is doing, what kind of quality is coming off that machine, and it's visible to them, that helps them take some pride in it. They may be more proactive. All those kind of benefits can come from having data that's accessible. I guess that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. So we'll go to Larry with the same question. Having a connected shop floor help improve the efficiency of a current worker with so many people looking for a workforce?
The biggest thing you're hearing in the news right now is, oh, we don't have any people to work. Well, I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I know there's a shortage of employees. I mean, anybody that's been to any conferences in the last 10 years has heard ITR economics and Oxford talk about, population triangles and how, that's probably going to be the downfall of China and Russia. And that even we're going to have, what was it? I think in the next 30 years, a 9 million person disparity between jobs available and people available to fill those jobs. That's where connectivity can improve and help, because you're going to have less people. And as we all know, as time goes on, when I started working in the shop, we made our own tools. If you didn't have a tool, you ground one by hand and made it work. Try finding somebody in the shop now that even knows how to sharpen a drill. It's something as simple as reading a caliper and indicator. I mean, we're training a new guy in one of our quality departments, and I kind of chuckle every time this happens, because I'm like, here we are, a company with all this advanced technology, and I'm trying to teach a kid what a difference is between a thousandths and a tenths indicator. And it's like, to me, that was normal. I just knew it because I grew up around it. But the capabilities that are available now versus what were available 30 years ago, I'm not saying that they're better or worse. I'm saying that we have to look at the situations we've created in our industry and fill these huge, what are becoming huger and huger gaps in trained personnel versus skilled personnel. And, we all have that guy in our shop who's like Methuselah, that, is the guy that knows everything that's ever happened in our shop. I mean, we've been manufacturing in the United States since 1981. And we actually have a young man who's been with us since that day. And he's grown through our kind of through the company, and now he's one of our engineers. And when I have a historical question, I'll go and ask him, well, when Rob retires, there is no history anymore. It's so we're trying to gather that information. We're trying to provide people with more information. I think the biggest key now is training. We're investing a lot of money in training people. We're investing a lot of money in having apprentices come in and, interns to start with. And we're talking about establishing this apprenticeship program. And again, in a country that stopped doing that, like in the 60s and 70s, it's kind of nice to see us come full circle, because I think if you have a trained workforce and you give them the capabilities and the information they need to be successful, we'll continue to be a world leader. We're still the largest manufacturing economy in the world. Some people will argue that, well, China's 40% cheaper. Well, China's only 40% cheaper because they're subsidized. If our government subsidized our manufacturing like other governments do, we would be much more competitive worldwide. Well, we're capitalists. Guess what? The guy with he who with the most gold wins. So as long as you have the most gold in the end, you win. You just have to know how to keep that talent in your country, and that's the biggest problem we have. The U.S., unlike Europe or Asia, people will move around the world from this country. You talk to Europeans or Asians about this, they just look at you like you're speaking a different language. No pun intended. And but they have no recollection of that. I mean, we're an Italian-based company. We have kids in their 30s, 40s that still live at home with their parents because they're not married. Here, God, I turned 16, went to college, never went home. I mean, I had no interest in it, but we're just a different culture. And knowing that culture, we have to prepare the next generation for that. And that's the biggest problem we have right now is how are we preparing the next generation to be available and have enough knowledge to continue down the path of being a world leader. That's my biggest concern as a part of this industry. And like I said, we're investing a lot of money in training and just reimbursement about in educational expenses, putting people in the right jobs too. You know, it used to be, oh, my dad worked in a shop, so I'm working in the shop. You know, before this all started, I was talking to Brandon and Jake about, you know, I grew up in a company, in a family who my father owned a machine tool distributorship. And I can remember the day that hit me in the head that I didn't want to do what my dad did, and having to go tell him, you know, Dad, this is not what I want to do. But he was happy because I realized I knew what I wanted. He couldn't provide that until I told him. And then from that day on, he was my biggest fan. I mean, even though he, you know, had planned on one of his kids someday taking over this great industry, great business he built, you know what? He was more concerned about us being happy and doing what made us happy. And I think in an environment that we're all in right now, we have to take people at the value they have. They're human beings. Value their talents. Don't try and tell them what they're not. Tell them what they are and reinforce that. You know, my father's probably rolling in his grave right now, smacking me in the back of the head, saying, "What are you talking about? I told you to do it. That's the way it should be." And my kids can't believe where I grew up. So, you know, I guess I'm a kind parent compared, but my father was tough love, and he also understood that nothing in life is free. And I think that we've raised a whole generation of kids that are looking for like, well, he'll tell me how to do it. No, I won't. You figure it out, man. Because when I'm gone 4 years from now, guess what you're going to have to do? Figure this out on your own. We need to prepare that workforce for the next generation, and we need to prepare our workforce and our economy to adapt to what's changing in the world. I think that's how we're going to save this.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. So go back to Brandon, as obviously the whole discussion has been about shop floor connectivity. Do you have any favorite examples of seeing your products help connect a customer's operations?
Yeah, actually two I can think of. One in particular we're working on now. But what I find to be fascinating is it's a multi-op machining environment. So they have a turning machine and a mill. Currently, they're using one of our probes in the mill just to monitor they don't have any catastrophic tool breakdown in the lathe. By using Renishaw Central, it's actually the first opportunity we're going to have to link a mill and a lathe and allow the measurement data coming off the mill, where before it would just error if they got a gross error and it would stop the line. Now it's actually going to be able to provide tool offsets directly back to the lathe. So this is truly, I think, the first time that has happened where you have this multi-op, but communication between them, allowing you to better control the first operation. Then the other one is more of a funny anecdote is we recently provided a customer and they're primarily using Renishaw Central to monitor their CMM lab. But the manager works upstairs. Now he's monitoring, I think it's about 7 CMMs. He can see what's running, what the status, how many failures, all the things that we can provide. And when I last talked to him, he said, but now I got to figure out how to get my steps in for the day because he's not running up and down to the lab every day or every hour. So yeah, again, information is empowering both examples, but in different ways.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. So then, Larry, do you have any favorite examples of a connected shop floor using your products?
Multiples, but probably the one that hits me in the head the hardest is, having a customer, and this customer is a customer who's bought from us for about 35 years. And we started doing this presentation, his first comment to me was, "You guys are a work holding company. What do you know about electronics?" I was like, "If you're asking me, I don't know anything about electronics, so you're wasting your time asking me questions." And we made a joke that, how much the industry's changed since we started doing this. And I said, "Here, let me ask you a question." I said, "Are you doing your processes the same way now as you did 30 years ago when we first met?" She's like, "Well, no, we wouldn't be competitive." And I just looked at him. I said, "Do we need to continue this conversation?" Once you prove to people that what you're selling them, and it's the biggest problem we have in our industry is, and I say this to our sales guys and our technical people all the time, just because you say it doesn't mean they're going to believe it because they've been sold a bill of goods before. There's nothing worse than introducing a new technology and have a guy go, "Give me an example." Well, I can't. There is nobody that's doing this right now. You're going to be my guinea pig. Well, What do you mean I'm going to be a guinea pig? Well, you're going to be on the cutting edge of this technology, so you're going to understand it before any of your competitors know it exists. It's going to give you a competitive. The minute you start telling them what it's going to do for them, you open minds. Um, it's hard in an industry where we've been doing things so similar for so long. We just adapted CNC to what started out as a manual process. When I walk into a shop and the guy points to his proudest piece of work holding is a Kurt D60 vise. And I'm like, but what does that vice do for you? He goes, well, it holds my ports. Well, how do you know it's holding your part right? Well, I count on the operator to know that. Well, what do you do when you have a new operator? And then you see their faces. They're like, oh God, I never realized, and say, I'm just trying to get your attention. We can stop these things from happening. When you give people the ability to know what the outcome's going to be, but you have to convince them that new technology is right for them. And that's why I said before, shop floor to the top floor, because if you introduce to a guy on the floor and he sees value, selling as manager is the easiest thing in the world. I never start any higher than an engineer, because the minute you sell them, you just got the best sales guy in the world. Once he believes and gets, really passionate about this, and I just sit back and wait. And I've had customers go, how come you're not saying anything? I was like, I don't need to say anything. He just sold it for me. I feel like I owe my commission now. But it's true. If you give people the right information and explain the technology in terms that they can understand and identify with, I think the word technology scares people. And I think, I'm infamous for saying, you want something broken, give it to me. I can tell you how it doesn't work, but it's interesting because that's some of our best situations. And this customer actually said to me, you were willing to take a chance on us, making us more competitive. Why us? I said, well, you opened your eyes and went, wow, this sounds like a great idea, but how do we make it work? And I said, you were the first guy that went, you know what, I'll try that. And we have an early adopter that's actually utilizing this now and is really, his competitors are trying to figure out how he's so much quicker, faster, with more predictability than they've ever been. So that's my shtick, dude.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Larry. So we'll go to Brandon with the next question. So obviously a connected shop floor is something that, probably did not see 20, 25 years ago. So then, going forward, what is the next step of connectivity when it comes to the shop floor?
Larry said something earlier that was interesting, which is the customers drive requests, drive what they want, drive a lot of innovation. I think what's next is the customer, the integrator, the machine tool OEM, all collaborating and trying to figure out. At this point, we've collected a lot of data. I think everybody's probably overwhelmed with the amount of data that they have, and more than likely still trying to figure out what does it mean to me in a lot of cases. So I think this collaboration between the end users and the device manufacturers, the machine tool builders, the cutting tool guys, needs to occur to help to try to extract what is the key relevant information kind of at a high level. But then when we see things like AI starting to becoming prevalent, I think that's what's going to help us sift through the kind of process specific data, looking for anomalies, looking for maybe things that we're overlooking. But you got to be careful. You got to make sure that the guys that know it, the guys that live it, the guys that breathe it are part of that process to vet. Are we getting useful information out of this AI, or is it feeding me? We're more efficient when the lights are out. So that's I think AI is big, but also that collaboration amongst the whole industry is going to be important to get us really using the data in a way that greatly improves efficiencies.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. So then go to Larry. How do you see the next step of a connected shop floor?
Man, Brandon, I don't know what I'm going to say. You just stole my thunder. Jesus.
Sorry, Larry.
To be honest, no, it's okay. I'm glad. It's nice to see in an industry for so long where people would say, well, that's his opinion, but our opinions are getting closer and closer together now because everybody's seeing that. And Brandon, you hit the nail on it, collaboration. If you don't collaborate with all the people involved in this cycle, whether it be the guy selling something as simple as the guy doing maintenance on machines, realizing that the maintenance is not going to be the same as it was before. Again, giving predictability and flexibility. I think it's kind of all been said already, but you have to realize that customers with any new technology are always apprehensive and nervous because you make an investment this large in something that generally in the past you bought, you went to the low bidder. It's kind of like the space shuttle. I never understood how you could launch somebody's butt into space on the thing with the lowest bidder, and an O-ring is the reason that something went wrong. It's just, you have to give people confidence that what you're proposing is going to improve their process. It might not happen right out of the box, and they may have to have some input collaboratively and with their customers about changes that need to be made. But I think once everybody's on the same page, it's going to make our business and our industry much more solid and give, again, predictability to what we need to do and where we need to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. So that just about wraps up our conversation today. So we would like to say a massive thank you to Renishaw and the Renishaw Central platform, and obviously a huge thank you to SMW Autoblok, which then in turns means a massive thank you to Brandon Golab and also to Larry Robbins. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and your expertise today. I truly appreciate it.
Same, Jake. Thanks, man. It's always great talking. It's always a great opportunity, Brandon. Great getting to know you finally. And man, thank you. Great information exchange. And I hope everybody on this, through this roundtable has gleaned something off of it that will make their situations better and more competitive.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Thank you for the opportunity, Jake. Larry, good to talk to you. And good luck.
Everybody, same here. Take care, guys. Have a great
day.
Yeah,
Bye-bye now.
You can listen to all of our episodes of Manufacturing Matters and Lunch and Learn podcast from the MFG Radio Network on Spotify, Apple Music, and on our websites, todaysmedicaldevelopments.com, aerospacemanufacturinganddesign.com, defenseandmunitions.com, and evdesignandmanufacturing.com.